All right, I see people trickling in. Welcome, welcome.
You do realize, Liv, these are people who could be at happy hour, but they've chosen to spend their time with you.
That is so true.
Impressive. That is impressive.
Yeah, a lot of them are clients, so I see you.
Okay.
Y'all are the best. That's why we didn't do a Friday happy hour session, Michael, because they're actually going to happy hour then.
Fair enough.
All right, we'll give it probably 30, maybe 60 more seconds. But just so you guys know, there is a chat section. When you do put something in the chat, it'll just come to me and Michael. So just wanted to let you guys know that. Thanks for attending too. Do you see a chat, Michael? Maybe it's just a Q&A.
Q&A.
Q&A, that's
when
right.
When it's a group environment, I think it's a Q&A and that comes straight to us.
Oh, what did I just do?
Well, you raised somebody's hand or they raised their own hand?
Oh.
Did you mean to do that?
I don't know, but I know TK is okay with me calling her out. Hey, TK. Oh, hi, Emily. Okay, I see it. It's the Q&A.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, we will get started in just a second. All right, I am going to share my screen. Oh, hi, TK. So sweet. Michael, do you see my screen?
I do.
Amazing.
You're good to go.
All right, let's do this. Well, hi, everyone. I know a lot of you guys, but there are some new folks in this room. And so I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for being here today. My name is Liv, and I'm a financial planner at 49 Financial. And so for those of y'all who have never heard of 49 before, we are a comprehensive financial planning firm that is headquartered in Austin, Texas. And so that is where I started, but we have experienced a ton of growth over the 10 years. And so we've got 8 offices all over the country. And I had the incredible privilege of helping launch our first West Coast branch out in Los Angeles, California, last July of 2022. And so I just want to thank you guys for being here today, because a big reason why I pursued finance was not necessarily because I wanted to geek out on the numbers and the data and the charts. That's why we've got Michael here. But really the reason why is because I'm a people person and I love getting to work with individuals like y'all. And so I named this webinar Woman, Wealth, and Wellbeing, because I feel like oftentimes people don't associate this idea of money and finance with well-being and health. And that was honestly myself included. When I think about health, I think about probably the fact that I should probably be eating less Chick-fil-A, and TK knows that too, because we usually go together. And then I also think about just this idea of well-being in doctors. For myself, I grew up with 2 physicians as parents. My father leads the heart surgery team out for Kaiser Permanente in Oregon. And then my mother was an OBGYN. And then recently in 2017, started a nonprofit to offer healthcare to anyone that needs it, regardless of insurance. And so this is not a perfect analogy by any means. But I think about the work that me, Michael, and our team get to do when it comes to serving people in their finances to what my parents get to do in serving their patients. I think about how much trust patients probably put in people like my father and the heart team before closing their eyes and going into surgery. I mean, I wouldn't feel comfortable if my dad pulled out a scalpel and he didn't go to med school and couldn't hold his hand steady, right? So there's a level of performance and experience and tenure that comes with building trust. But I think specifically to the financial industry, we miss this other aspect, which is the emotional piece. How someone can make you feel, how you think about your finances. And so I feel really blessed growing up with parents where I got to hear the stories of how they got to make their patients feel, and getting to serve and care for them. And that's what I want to do here in this industry. And so in terms of today, we can't lose sight of the numbers as well when it comes to financial planning. And so that is a perfect segue to introduce Michael French, our Senior Vice President of Investments. So for those of y'all that are clients, this is the wizard behind the curtain. He is the individual building the portfolios, making the asset allocation changes, and really just leading the team out here for anything wealth management. In addition to that, he has just been a huge advocate to my practice in believing in me, and then also the direction and impact that I want to grow in terms of serving females in their finances. And so with over 40 years of experience managing billions of dollars of assets, I know how expensive his time is. And so, Michael, I just want to thank you so much for being here today. And I'd love for you to do a quick introduction of yourself.
Well, thank you, Liv. When you said over 40, just to clarify, it's over 30. Don't age me.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. In 2 of those years, the last 2 years, I've been here at 49, and it has been a joy to work with our financial planners. Prior to coming here, I was the chief investment officer at a wealth management firm. And a lot of times people ask, well, what's the difference? And so the way I would describe it is wealth management is simply investing money, creating portfolios, finding investment opportunities for individuals. But when you work with a financial planner, we have the opportunity in my field to make sure that we're actually doing something that is in the best interest for a client. So in other words, 2 65-year-olds are not both the same. We should treat them as unique individuals. And so when we build portfolios today here at 49, when we find investment opportunities, it is 100% entirely driven towards making sure that people reach whatever the financial objective is today. And so I thank you so much for allowing me to be here. It is exciting to have the opportunity to hear what some of our clients who are women and some prospects who are women have to say, to hear your stories, and to get to share how I can partner with Liv and support her in building basically financial freedom for you guys. So Liv, I know you have put together an entire framework to talk through why we're here today and what we hope to walk away with.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly where I want to start. Before we even go into how to achieve financial wellness, understanding the why of this webinar is extremely important. And so I want to say first, each and every one of you guys are different. You guys are different individuals, unique in your own ways, but then also probably in your goals and priorities. And so in that, I'm not going to be able to answer every single specific question that you may have individually. Feel free to put it in the chat so that I can follow up on that. But so much of being a planner is simply just understanding what is important to you. And so in that, we will discover different implications, complications, aspects, scenarios that are more catered to you, because you may be a single mother that is managing being a full-time worker and taking care of your kiddos. You may be already retired. What does that look like in terms of distribution planning with the inflation and interest rates that are going on today? And so we can't get to number 2 until we understand who you are as a person, but then also your goals and objectives. Once we do that, then we can get to the how to achieve financial wellness, by aligning those goals that you have identified into actionable items that move you forward. And so in terms of our position for today, I mean, me and Michael aren't trying to sell you anything by any means. We are a completely independent financial planning firm. And so our job is to simply consult. And so for the next 20 minutes, we'll get to talk through a framework. And so really just the call of action for today is to listen. Are y'all ready? I know you guys can't say anything, but I'm going to pretend that people are saying yes in their head. And so as we go into the why of this webinar first, I wanted to put up some pretty compelling statistics. And as I show this next slide, I want you to ask yourself, does this represent me in the world today? And so I see your names in this webinar. And so I know that a lot of y'all fall in that first category, that you have received a degree. Now, I don't think any of y'all have competed in the 2021 Olympics. If you have, I would love to take a selfie with you because I'm a Gen Zer and that's what Gen Zers do. But really, as I go to the next slide, you'll see that women's power isn't just growing, but so are women's assets. And so as I show this next slide, I want you to ask yourself the question, does this resonate with me in the world today? So some of you may be thinking, I'm making more money than I ever thought that I would make. Or I'm wealthier than I have ever been before. And that's encouraging. That's super empowering. And it's exciting to see women step into roles that honestly in the history weren't even available for them at one point. As a female in this industry, as an Asian in this industry, I see myself as a minority, but I see it as nothing but empowering, to be quite honest. I get to meet certain individuals that others wouldn't be able to meet. And I think that's really, really cool. And so as I turn to this next final slide on statistics, it's going to pivot to the fact that even though we see this reality of women making a lot more money than they ever thought that they would make, for example, there is still this interesting dichotomy of how people feel about their finances despite this reality. And so I want you to write down one emotion that you associate with your finances in terms of how it makes you feel as you take a look at these next couple bullet points. So I do want to ask Michael which one stands out to him, but one of the things when I looked at this slide first that really stood out to me was the fourth bullet point. That 65% of women say that finances are their top cause of stress. I mean, we just saw the last slide. And so for me, the fact that women still feel overwhelmed or uncertain is really disconcerting. And so this is a why of the webinar, this tension between data and emotions and how someone feels about their finances that honestly even affects how they invest and how they build a plan. And so I'm really excited to get to continue on in this framework that we talked through. But Michael, what stands out to you on this slide?
I think the one that usually resonates with me the most is that 69% of women don't consider themselves investors, and that has massive implications, but it's also a bit of a lie. Because there are a number of studies that we could go to that would show that women, by and large, have better investment outcomes when they're self-directed than men do. A number of reasons for that. They're more patient, they trade less, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that 69% just jumps out to me because it's essentially saying a lot of people are believing something that's not true about themselves, which again is one of the reasons that I love working with you because you're helping empower people to not believe things that aren't true, but really focusing on things that are actual realities through the process.
Absolutely. Yeah. So as we go into really the how, before we even think about building a financial plan for someone, we need to understand what their goals are. And when you think of goal identification, I don't know about some of you guys, but for me, I love setting goals. But there is one thing for saying a goal and setting a goal, and then actually another goal to execute on it. For me, I'm a fitness junkie. I think a lot about just goals I have for fitness. I mean, it's a lot harder to actually do the thing and get to the end goal than just say, hey, this is what I want to do, right? And so a lot of you may look into the future and think through specific goals. And so I'd love for you to just send me one goal that you have in life. And I know that's super, super broad. What I found when taking people through a client meeting process is that they're usually pretty broad. I want to be happy. I want to be prepared. I don't want to feel stressed out about my finances. I want to fill in the blank. And in this, it can be pretty hard to actually develop actionable and practical next steps to get there. Not a lot of people say, hey, Liv, my number is this. Well, even if you do have that number, and I know I do have some clients that are on top of it, they're phenomenal. They're like, Liv, this is exactly what I want, and that's great. But another follow-up question is, what does that actually represent in context? I mean, you think about how much things cost now. I live in LA, so it's even more expensive. But when you think about cost of living, spending patterns, travel, if you love to travel, obviously how that plays into it, personality, priorities, life expectancy. There are so many different things to consider before even building a plan. And so that's what I get to sort through with my clients as a relationship manager, as a friend, as someone relatable, in figuring out what those goals are. And so as we continue to go on, one thing I will say is there is a methodology to it. It's not just Liv and Michael saying dream big, set goals. There is actually a numerical, mathematical equation in regards to once we figure out these goals and these considerations and how to build a plan. French, would you add anything to this?
Yeah, Liv, as the numbers person who did actually want to do finance my entire life, one of the things that I think is really interesting is that so many of the answers that people have when we ask this question are tied to emotions. So for instance, I want to have enough money so that I feel comfortable or feel secure or feel confident. But the word feel is really key there. And so what we really want to do is help people figure out what that number is. Are you on track or are you not? Because I mean, Liv, you and I have hung out before, and I have had the joy of being in a car with you as you have driven in a straight.
I know where this is going.
And you've managed to get lost. And I'm like, Liv, it was just right down the street. How did we end up getting lost? And I think having all joking aside, having a framework for, hey, am I on pace to get where I need to be so that I feel comfortable on this journey, so that I feel confident on this journey? That's really the thing that people are looking for. And so when we go through the math, it's not the math for the math's sake, it's the math so that you get to have the emotions associated with the journey that you're looking for.
Totally. Well, thank you for bringing up my lack of sense of direction. My mother's not in this webinar, but she'll be on Saturdays. So I blame her for it, but we can't be good at everything. But one thing I'll show on the next slide is one of my favorite places to go. Not that one. We don't want statistics. We want a beautiful sunset. So being from Portland, Oregon, or right outside of it, my parents invested in a beach house on the Oregon coast a little over a decade ago. And so I have had just such fun experiences getting to drive out here with family, with friends, and just getting to spend time at the beach. The Oregon coast is different than California beaches. They're really cold and usually rainy, but it's totally worth it. And so the reason why I'm showing this picture is because it takes about 2.5 hours to get there. And I know Emily's in this webinar. She's the last person I took up to the Oregon coast, but I'm always making sure that I've got my phone charged up, which has my GPS on it. And I've gone over 10 times to the Oregon coast to this beach house, but I always need to have my GPS, even though I know some of the routes and kind of like the general approach on how to get there. If I don't have my GPS, I'm driving 2.5 hours in the wrong direction. And so when I take this analogy and bring it to what I do as a financial planner, we get to really just help clients make sure that they're on track, right? A GPS nowadays can even tell you when you're about to hit rush hour or if there's an accident coming up. And that's extremely helpful. Because the reality is when you're building a 30 to 40 plus year retirement plan, there's going to be things that happen in life, whether it's a change of goals for you personally, or just things in the market, things in tax legislation. There are so many different components to consider. And so getting to actually build out a map and have a GPS that's taking you from point A to point B is going to be extremely helpful. And then the last thing I'll say is getting to bring a friend for the ride. I mean, Emily was my last person I took to the Oregon coast. Gosh, it's so fun to have someone in the passenger seat to talk to as I'm driving out there, right? Someone to have conversations with, to laugh with, to remind me, hey, this is going to be a twisty, turny path. You might get a little bit carsick. And so getting to invite people into a financial plan is extremely comforting and really speaks to the emotional aspect of your finances and how you feel about it. And so, Michael, when we think about identifying our goals and building a map for retirement, you talk about it in this data science term that a lot of our clients resonate with. And so can you walk us through that?
For sure. I think on this next slide, we talk about really what it is that I'm going to need in retirement. And so a lot of times people are like, well, I don't know. What am I going to need in retirement? And so what we did is we took this study, we broke it down into a graph. And what you see is for people who make less money, who have a lower income, they're going to need to replace virtually everything that they made on the day they retire after retirement. But for people who, let's say, make $100,000 or $150,000, what you see there is that if you make $150,000 on the day you retire, studies would say that once you enter retirement, you're going to need on average about $120,000 per year. Now, it's going to be adjusted for inflation. No two people are alike. There's something called a spending smile, where sometimes you spend more early in retirement, then you slow down, then you spend more at the end of retirement because of health concerns, et cetera. But when we look at this slide, what it helps us to understand is, oh, okay, somebody has put some thought into if I retire and make $150,000 on the day I retire, I don't need all of that the day after. Why? Well, let's just be logical. On the day I retired, I stopped saving for retirement. So let's say that 10% a year was being saved for retirement. We're no longer saving for retirement. Or maybe my tax rates change, or maybe some of my spending changes. And so what we have experienced and what we've observed over decades as an industry of studies is that people actually need less on that day they retire than they did before retirement. What we also observe for somebody who makes $150,000 a year is that a percentage of that is going to be provided for by Social Security. But by and large, this person is responsible for providing about $75,000 a year for themselves, about 47% of the income that they made on the day they retired. And so using their own assets, using maybe part-time work, and figuring out how to optimize that income is really our goal, helping you navigate through that process. So I think a lot of people, this leads to the question, okay, that's what I need when I get to the end. That should be kind of a framework. I'm okay with that. But how do I know if I'm on track? Because for most people, I'm guessing most of you aren't yet retired. So, Liv, when we think about goals and being on track as you go to the next slide, what we're observing is, hey, when I am 50 years old, let's say, and I make $150,000 a year, what is the multiple of my salary that I should have expected to save? Now, I think it's really important to stop here and look at this chart and find your age, and then find the income that is closest to your approximate income, and then identify the number, and then do the math. So like I said before, if a 50-year-old person makes $150,000 a year, then their number is 5.9. So 6 times $150,000, they would expect to, at the age of 50, have about $900,000 set aside for retirement. Now, I want to pause there because, again, a lot of what we're experiencing would be emotion. So if you don't mind, throw into the chat or the Q&A, I guess, throw into the Q&A when you see that number. And again, it's just us looking at it, but what is the emotion that you experience when you see that number? So it can be questioning, man, are you sure that's the right number? I mean, there's all this data, there's a bunch of disclosures, but is that real? It can be a little bit of angst. I don't feel like I'm really getting to where I need to be. It can be relief. Oh, thank gosh, I'm way ahead of schedule. It can be a sense of panic. Oh no, if you're 50, you probably have kids about to go to school. You have other financial obligations and you're like, oh no, I am not even close. If you're in your 30s, your 40s, you're looking at those numbers and maybe you're at 35 and you make $125,000 a year and you're like, I'm already behind. I don't have $250,000 saved. Oh no, what do I do? And so dealing with these emotions is really the key, because the math is just the math. When we look at this, we will look at something like this and say, we can help somebody navigate the math, but we also need to navigate the emotions, because so many times our emotions kind of jump in and crush what it is that you know, our financial plan essentially. So Liv, next slide. I know we talk about kind of what it is that we do. And so when we think about getting started in investing, what we're looking at is, what is the next step for you? When you think about investing, when you think about your financial plan, most people kind of start with an, oh no, am I on track? And so you might have looked at that slide, and I know we've gotten some questions like, what is this supposed to be, what I want to make, or what I think I'm going to make at the end? What happens if I did a career change? And so these are all really good questions and very specific and unique. But I think, Liv, when we look at those questions or when we look at those emotions, really what this is an invitation to start the process with your financial planner of figuring out, am I on track? And if I'm not, how do I get there? How do I get started investing?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for that, Michael, because that's a perfect segue in terms of what we actually do. And I think when people think of financial planning, whether it's a limited scope of knowledge or what they've just experienced up to this point, it's usually just one thing or the other. And honestly, the way that I like to describe what I do is it's a dialogue, it's a conversation. Financial planning is subjective, right? And so if it's based off of a series of opinions, how we start is really dependent on getting to know you. And so as you can see here, and I see some people in the chat, some of y'all are business owners, right? And so when you look at the 6-clog wheel, I mean, this might not apply to all of you, but if you're a business owner, how does business planning interact with your personal plan? And maybe even tax planning with different types of advantages you have in that area. If you're charitably minded, how do you think through strategic giving as a part of your financial plan as you grow your assets and prepare for retirement, but also want to be generous to others? And so as you can see here at 49, we are comprehensive planners. And so we want to meet you at where you're at instead of where you aren't. And so that might mean starting in one specific area, but it also might mean, I'm not really sure what I want, and that's okay. Because we have 2 different processes here at 49 that we really cater to based off of what you're looking for. And so personally, the retirement checkup is my favorite to get to take clients through, because it's really an opportunity for folks approaching retirement in the next 10 years to start thinking through, man, I mean, I have been saving, I have been accumulating, I have gotten to a point where this should be an exciting season of my life, not a stressful one. And so we get to meet clients wherever they're at and start to begin discovering, what are your dreams? What are your goals? What are your objectives? But even before going through options or even a recommendation, we want to educate you. Some of y'all know this, not all of you guys, but I was an education major when I started college because I love to learn. And I think education is one of the greatest gifts to give to my community. And so the diagnosis meeting is really just an opportunity to be like, hey, now let's teach you. Let's help you feel confident. Talk about the emotional aspect. If you feel like you have knowledge about where you are in your plan and where you're tracking, you're going to feel so much better as we do get to a final recommendation. And then lastly, lifetime reviews. I mean, you're probably looking at me and you're like, you're quite young, right? And that's what I love about being a part of 49. I mean, the fact that they believe in me and they're willing to invest in me like Michael is, to build a team around you where you have different subject matter experts, but you also have myself that is committed to doing life with you for the long term throughout retirement and throughout your entire life. And so this is one of the processes. The second process, and I know we're running short on time, so I'll wrap us up here, is a specific division that we launched for folks that aren't just prioritizing what to do with their assets in today's world and how they want to retire and when they retire, but they built up an asset base where the next question is, how do I want to leave a legacy? What am I going to do with my asset base when I do pass? And how do I want to steward that when considering my life today and my life when I'm gone? And so as you can see here, a lot of these folks do qualify for a family office, but family offices are usually quite expensive. And so our proposition here at 49 is we're going to meet you where you're at. You probably already have CPAs, tax advisors, estate attorneys, etc. Our job is to either build a team around your external partners, or if you want a one-stop shop because things are usually quite complicated, we can streamline and centralize everything to cater best to you. And so super excited about this division that we launched, but those are really the 2 different processes. Dean is not on a panel, but I do see him a part of the attendees. Thank you, Dean, for being here today. But Dean is the person that brought me into the business, and I would not be here without him. The fact that there are just like male mentors in my life that are like, Liv, I see where you're going and I want to help you grow this practice is nothing but encouraging. It makes me emotional, so talk about emotions. But I want you to know that you have an entire team, and at 49, we also know that if cases get more complicated, if your plan is even more complex than these 4 people here, we're going to bring in the right individuals to make sure that you get the all-star team that you need and the best value service possible. And so as we wrap up, I am late as usual, but I just want to say thank you guys so much for attending. I know there are a lot of y'all that are clients, and I want to say I can't do my job without you. Some of you guys have been key individuals that have built my practice around connections and people that you know. And so in that, we are doing one more Saturday session at 9 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Central time. I would love for you to invite a friend to that session. And so that way I can connect and continue to grow my practice around phenomenal individuals like y'all. So thank you guys so much for being here today. Thank you, Michael, so much for supporting me today in our very first webinar. When you guys pop off, you're going to get a survey. I'd love to hear from you. Was this helpful? Would you like to see more? If you want more webinars, what do you want us to speak on? Because I build my practice around you, and I want to make sure that I'm adding value. Thank you, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Michael. See ya.
Bye, Liv.